all you literary legends and luminaries. I'm Julie, and welcome to a thankful episode of Booksmart. This week is Thanksgiving, so I wanted to choose an uplifting book, one that makes you feel like there is kindness and goodness and gratefulness in the world. I chose one from my small library of books that I've saved over the years. It's Jewel's Never Broken. Songs are only half the story. I adore Jewel. You Were Meant for Me made her one of my favorite female artists, in line with Sarah McLachlan. By the mid-90s, I had gravitated to the more folksy type music, the quieter songs that packed just as much of a punch as the in-your-face songs. Like Lisa Loeb's Stay spoke to me more than Alanis Morissette's You Ought to Know. You Were Meant for Me was one of my favorite songs at the time, so much so I tried unsuccessfully to play the guitar. I did not know Jewel had written a memoir in 2015. Then I found it online, but decided not to order it as I had plenty of books in my to-read stack. Then, serendipitously, I found it at a thrift store after they gave me a coupon for donating a whole bunch of stuff. How appropriate for this book. I started reading it before I'd even finished the book I was in the middle of reading. I purchased Jewel's poetry book a long time ago when I was in my 20s. A Night Without Armor. Some people criticize it for sounding like an angst-ridden high school girl wrote it, but I adore it. My favorite one, which I use in my English classes all the time, is I'm Writing to Tell You. My students love that poem. Her memoir opens with a poem that starts with 40 years old. When did this happen? I had just turned 40 at the time. Jewel is just a few years older than me. Her timing is impeccable. I went into the book knowing several things about Jewel, but the reason I wanted to read her memoir so much is because she's such a nice person. She exudes a benevolence, a warmth, a graciousness, an aura of peace. It's in her music too. Hands and intuition and Standing Still and Foolish Games all send profound messages about life and love and loss. With every horrible misstep the world takes or Jewel experiences, there's a light she finds and seems to spread. I used to watch Dancing with the Stars obsessively until they fired Tom Bergeron, and then I haven't watched it since and won't. Jewel was scheduled to be a contestant, but then suffered an injury before the premiere. I was so devastated. She's one of those people you root for, who you know make the world a more positive place every single day. If you could pick someone in this lifetime that you could be in some parallel universe, I would always pick Jewel. There's so much good stuff in her book. You will feel good about yourself and the world around you while you are reading this book. When you finish the book, you will feel like you can change the world. You can overcome any adversity. You can be beautiful and live in a beautiful world. Her memoir is like her music, bohemian, folksy, a perfect flower child from the 60s without all the drugs and discontent. Even the picture of her on the front spoke to me. She's an animal lover and she's wearing a dress while on a horse. That's exactly what my Barbie looked like on Prancer, her white Arabian horse. Jewel maintained her unique personality even after she became a star. Her memoir starts at the beginning. She's from Alaska. Jewel comes by her talent genetically. Both her parents are musical. Her parents divorced when she's young and much dysfunction occurs. What I love about her writing is how she integrates the bad things that happen with lessons that she learns. She's seamless with these profound statements as if everything bad that happens to us is meant to make us smarter, more adaptable, more compassionate. Here's an example when she's talking about her dad and her brother and that dynamic. I handled the stress by trying to be the best at singing and horse riding and by trying to eliminate the competition. I didn't understand that it was not my brother's fault he was the favorite, and I resented him badly for it. I had a sharp tongue, and I used my intuition like a weapon. Whatever insecurity and weakness I sensed in him, I exploited. I tried to make him feel as badly about himself as my dad made me feel about myself. My need to be loved was so strong that it took several years for my writing to expose the real issue, and for my conscience to get a foothold and defend my younger brother. To this day, I am deeply regretful and sorry that I was not mature enough to see he was not an enemy but a victim in the same war. It took years of reflection to see that being the favorite can be a worse trap, as it leaves no door to exit by. Loyalty to the love one receives, dysfunctional as it may be, is sometimes too strong a force to break free from. I had no idea what a gift it was that at least I knew I wanted out. Something my life has taught me is not to see things in black and white. People are neither all good nor all bad. Hurt people can become hurtful, and my father's own actions reflected this. It's so well-rounded. Her memoir is a perfect example of those eyes we have when we write. the I we have at the time the event happened, and the I we have now, the one who can see the bigger picture, who knows how things ended up. She leaves home at 15 and makes it. Maybe her story resonated with me so much because I teach at a juvenile detention center. Many of my students have left home, and they are the statistics you see on the news, the ones who commit crimes, use drugs, the ones who don't graduate, who become teen parents, who when they turn 18, they leave JDC to go to jail. But Jewel had some innate spirit in her, a desire to make choices that always put her on the path to her dreams, which was to create art. She graduates school, works several jobs to pay her own rent, and then is discovered at just 19 years old, thanks to all that yodeling so long ago on stage with her dad. She's homeless for a while, yet doesn't let that get in her way of her goals. Her memoir is much more than a rags to riches story. It's almost like a self-help book showing the reader what guidance she followed, what lessons she learned, how she didn't become a statistic, how to live, and most importantly, how to be content with the life that you have while reaching for your dreams. This is what she writes about the time in her life shortly after she had graduated. I knew my reality was my perception of reality. Perception was everything. A glass half empty and a glass half full were both true. Schrodinger's cat was both alive and dead. I learned years later that my gratitude practice actually helped me form new neural pathways. The hippie rituals of positive affirmations are not just baloney. Gratitude doesn't exist only in your mind. You have to feel it in your whole being. Feelings are the shadows of thoughts. When we have negative thoughts, our emotions mirror them with anxiety. You can often see what you are thinking by reverse engineering and studying your feelings. I worked hard to identify my feelings, and when I grew anxious, I came to see that my thoughts were often skewing negatively. This is where I had a chance to stop the cycle. I didn't have to be a victim of my own mind. I thought change was going to come in big dramatic moments and grand gestures. Instead, I realized change came in small and seemingly insignificant ways. It came by breaking a thought or a feeling down to its fundamental building blocks. She has those kinds of bits of wisdom all the way throughout, and that's what I love most about her memoir. In the midst of her own story, she embraces the reader with these lovely ways of living. That's part of the reason I couldn't put the book down. I was gaining so much inspiration that I could apply to my own life, applicable bits of how to without the god-awful condescension or pretentiousness of a self-help book. I thought of Stephen King again. He just keeps coming up in my Book Smart episodes. The writer-reader connection, how they communicate telepathically. I felt like Jewel was sitting on my shoulder, her positivity infectious. Yet she's so real. She's not just this fake poser of positivity. She says she sounds like Kermit the Frog in Who Will Save Your Soul and You Were Meant for Me, and even tells the reader to put the book down and go listen. Who will save your soul? I can kind of see what she means. And her teeth. Oh yes, people made fun of her teeth. I loved her teeth because my teeth were never straight. My mom told me for years that my one tooth would come down. It got better after I had my wisdom teeth removed when I was 31 years old, but it still never lined up with the rest of my teeth. I was always self-conscious of my teeth. Why did everyone always have to talk about Jewel's teeth? I always thought she was stunning, partly because she looked so natural. Jewel also writes about making her videos. Her Pieces of You album aggravated me because the versions of Foolish Games and You Were Meant for Me were not the versions on her radio or the video. Her memoir explained why, as there was a distinctive gap between the time she made the album to when she became a hit and started releasing more songs from that album. She worked her butt off, traveling and touring and doing shows. By the time she released more songs, they tweaked them. Perhaps her original version of You Were Meant for Me sounds like Kermit the Frog. I don't remember, since I bought the CD single for You Were Meant for Me. Thanks to Pop-Up Video, which gave me the inspiration for my own pop-ups here at Booksmart, I already knew that Sean Penn directed the first version of the video, but Jewel redid it because Sean Penn's version was a bit too dark for her taste. But I didn't know that Sean Penn and Jewel were a couple for a while. They were together for quite some time. She doesn't develop it much, keeping it private, but it is difficult to imagine that Sean Penn married someone like Madonna and then dated someone like Jewel. If there were ever two opposites in the world, it would be Madonna and Jewel. We learn about Jewel's mom and how she mishandled Jewel's money and lied, but we don't hear all the details. She develops her marriage and then her favorite part, motherhood, and then her divorce. She even records her own music and sells it without a record label dictating anything. She's brilliant. In 382 pages, she writes her whole life story. I know, technically that's not a memoir, but an autobiography, but I'm going to let this one slide because of the complexity of Jewel's writing. We get poems throughout, we get self-help tidbits, we get a whole lot more than just a memoir that name drops somebody famous on every page. If you've read a ton of celebrity memoirs, you must read Jewel's just for the variety you'll get. I haven't read another memoir like Jewel's, and I've read quite a few. Matthew McConaughey's was a bit over the top for my taste, although I envied him for keeping a diary continually for so many years and then drawing from those. His memoir was a bit too preachy with a voice that grew obnoxious to me as the book continued. Considering I'm not a huge Matthew McConaughey fan, yet I adore Jewel, may have more to do with my opinions for both books. But still, it's well worth your time to read Never Broken. It's one of those books I've pegged to read again in my big stack if I ever have time to reread books. I have little to criticize. Jewel does skip around at times and then doesn't always develop significant events, but I wouldn't expect Jewel to write a well-organized and structured memoir. She ad-libs many of her lyrics during performances because she forgets the words. She also reads the crowd to decide what songs to sing rather than a prescribed performance of songs, which I found fascinating. I didn't find the skipping around irritating, especially when she engages the reader with her wisdom. The memoir constantly flowed, meandering at times, but I embraced my inner Winnie the Pooh, moving right along with the story. Perhaps the flow of the narrative is more crucial than its organization. An engaged reader won't stop to question its structure. But I will fully admit to my bias and recognize that some readers will find her lack of consistent structure and organization of ideas frustrating at times. At the end of the book and the afterword, Jewel has laid out over 20 rules to live by. One is practice being present, which she writes, "Watch your hands. They are the servants of your thoughts." How delightful is that? I love learning while I read, and Jewel's book gave me much to ponder and much to embrace and change in my own life. That's the whole point of reading, isn't it? To enrich our lives. That's what Jewel accomplishes in her memoir. I'll end this episode with how Jewel ends her book simply because it's so fitting. This is serious. Every day that passes is another day closer to looking back on your life and seeing whether you have done something meaningful. Don't let the days pass without doing something great. Be the architect of your dreams. Thanks for watching. And as always, my goal at Booksmart is to get a little bit smarter, one book at a time.